Today we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. And it comes the first Sunday following Christmas, when a lot of us have started to have just about enough of family. In fact, after the parties and cooking and visiting, some of us have had as much family as that we can handle. It's kind of like an overdose. Especially if they are not in the same political party. That can get real dicey during the holidays. Parents are now wondering when the kids are going to go back to school. A little togetherness goes a long way for every generation. But then comes this feast the week after Christmas. We are challenged to look at what it means to be a family, to be a community, to be a church. And we just have to turn to the manger and to the birth of Jesus. During this time of the year, we get sentimental over things. I know when Michael takes out the ornaments every year, I look at them. We have, I think, 4 or 5 creches or mangers throughout the house, and I remember when we bought them or when we were given them. And then I realized all this sentimentality has a lot to do with just paper mache. That's really all that they are when you think of it, plaster and paper. They're not really flesh and blood. But we forget that the Holy Family was flesh and blood. And yes, they were holy. But they were also human like you and I, not of plaster of Paris. Very human in every aspect of what it means to be human. The story of the Holy Family is a story of life, and the story not always turning the way you expected it to turn out. Mary, a teenage mother, conceiving a child before she was married, even today, that's scandalous in many circles. It's a story of a desperate and worried father, Joseph, trying to make the best out of what could be a terrible situation, as he considered the scandal associated with the whole deal, making a plan of divorce. But that would change. It's a story of a family forced to become refugees, and we are not too happy with refugees today in our country, are we? We hear so many negative things about immigrants and refugees, but that Holy Family who would be heading off to Egypt, the land of their persecutors, would be refugees, would be immigrants, as we have so many immigrants today. Let's not forget that. We often do. Jesus weeps of how we consider these refugees. But this family was holy and human at the same time. We need not forget this, especially now. The church calendar shows us that Christmas season is one of light, but it's also one of darkness at the same time. The light does not blast past 4:15 in the afternoon. It becomes dark. And the day after Christmas, we celebrate the feast of the first martyr of the church, St. Stephen. And a couple of days later, we mark the feast of the Holy Innocents, the children slaughtered by Herod because he was so crazed that someone might take his place. So Christmas has a darkness, has a shadow, but also has a light to it. The joy of Christ's birth is suddenly tempered by these tragic reminders of what his coming has cost us. And the Holy Family shared in that as well. We see a light that shines in the manger, but also with that light, we also see a light shining a few feet away upon the cross. The creche and the crucifix serve as a powerful reminder and a powerful lesson for the feast we celebrate today. And we realize that when we speak of the Holy Family, we speak of a family that struggled and suffered like so many of us. But this family also knew something that maybe some of us don't know. They had a gift of joy and a gift of hope among the three of them. They trusted completely in the providence of God, no matter what was in front of them. A trust that we need to have today, that I need to have today, in our own time. The Holy Family stands by us who worry and are filled with anxieties, who struggle, who seek God. A family who prays. The Holy Family stands beside parents who are anxious about their kids. The Holy Family walks with immigrants and refugees, separated from those that they love. The Holy Family sends comfort to teenage mothers and single parents. Let's not forget that. They console anyone who is considered to be an outcast, those who are bullied by those in power, those that the world forgot. The Holy Family shares our burdens, each one of our burdens, but they also uplift us by their example. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were never alone. They endured through the grace of God, and so must we. And they prayed a lot, I'm sure. They hoped a lot. They trusted in God's will for their lives. So life is simple and yet complex at the same time. I'm sure the Holy Family had moments when living those virtues seemed hard for them, or even impossible. But with God, nothing is impossible. They listened to God's voice, and Joseph did so even in a dream. And they gave themselves fully to God. They made of their lives a prayer. What a beautiful life we have when we lead a life of prayer. When everything we do becomes a prayer, even washing the dishes. When we find ourselves overwhelmed, we need to remember that we look today and remember to look toward that manger. There is our model for living, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But we need to see the entire panorama, not just the wise men over here or the crush over there, but we have to remember the cross in between. That was their life, and it's ours too. Yet, through all their hardships, in a time of anxiety and difficulty, persecution and tragedy, a time very much like our own when you think about it, they showed us how to be people of faith, people of joy, and people of love, people of forgiveness. They show us, in other words, how to be holy, how to be a holy family.